the public sector isn't working. Plus, politics legend Anne Widdecombe, my all-star panel, and former Labour MP Simon Danchuk. See you at 9.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
And welcome back. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. BBC Sport coverage has been disrupted for a second day in a row as presenters boycott the broadcaster in solidarity with Gary Lineker. The Match of the Day host dodged questions earlier, telling reporters, "I can't say anything regarding his future." However, his eldest son says he thinks the presenter will return but won't ever back down. Now, Six Nations coverage today did go ahead as scheduled, but 5 Live Radio Sport has been radically altered on both days of the weekend, and its understood Match of the Day 2 will be reduced to just 14 minutes tonight, with no presenter, pundits or commentary. Former BBC executive Roger Bolton says the controversy is diverting attention from the real issue.
It's this argument about what is impartiality and who must be impartial that is a wider question. Of course, the other thing that's happening here is the political parties, particularly the governing parties, see this as a wonderful opportunity in the culture wars to create trouble and divert attention from the fundamental issue here, which is illegal immigration, which is extraordinarily difficult to deal with.
The Prime Minister is flying to California to discuss the AUKUS defence deal between the UK, US and Australia. Rishi Sunak will meet his American and Australian counterparts, Joe Biden and Anthony Albanese, during which a deal to supply British nuclear-powered submarines to Australia will be confirmed. The aim of the AUKUS Pact, which was signed 2 years ago, is to boost the country's defences and counter China's threat in the Indo-Pacific region. The government says it will do everything it can to protect UK tech companies caught up in the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. The companies could start to experience difficulties on Monday morning, but the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says the Treasury's working to minimise damage to what he's described as some of our most promising companies in the UK. Last Friday, SVB's American parent company became the biggest failure of a US bank since the financial crash in 2008. It is now under US government control. The Health Secretary's criticised junior doctors for not calling off their strike on Monday. Writing in The Telegraph, Steve Barclay has described the 72-hour walkout as incredibly disappointing. The British Medical Association has described Mr Barclay's recent offer to negotiate as, in their words, a feeble attempt to stall us. It's expected to affect many services, including A&E and cancer and maternity care as well. And Everything Everywhere All at Once is the favourite to win Best Picture at the Oscars, which gets underway later in Hollywood. Although it will face stiff competition from The Banshees of Inisherin, which has an Irish record 9 nominations, and All Quiet on the Western Front. Bill Nye's up for Best Actor for his role in the film Living, and Andrea Riseborough received a Best Actress nomination for her role in To Leslie. All gets underway around midnight. We'll keep an eye on that for you. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News, and it's time now for Free Speech Nation.
The Gary Lineker furore rumbles on, the SNP is poised to select a new leader, and time's up for statues of old white men in Wales. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So, on tonight's show, I'm going to be speaking to Julie Bindel from the Lesbian Project, a group created to champion UK women who are same-sex attracted. And we'll be getting into a story that, of course, has dominated the headlines this week. That's the BBC's decision to ask Gary Lineker to step back from Match of the Day. And I'm going to be discussing with Elnaz Sabah-Bocek the suspected poisonings of Iranian schoolgirls across the country. Very disturbing story. But on a lighter note, my lovely studio guests tonight are comedians Leo Kearse and Bruce Devlin. Welcome both. Leo, have you had a good week?
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah?
Thanks.
Is that all you've got to say?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, you should have had a prepared anecdote.
Well, I bought some brie, and I bought loads because it was on yellow sticker offer, and I waited a month because it took a month to eat it all.
That's the best you've got. You bought a lot of brie.
Now I feel a bit ill.
Yeah, great. I'm sure you can top that, Bruce.
Yeah, where did you buy the brie?
I got it at Marks and Spencer's right across the road.
Oh.
It was like a quarter of the price.
I'm not going to let this show become about brie.
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to have that. We've got more important things to get on. Bruce, this is your first time on the show.
It is. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm quite delighted because we're going to be talking about Scotland in a bit. We have 2 Scottish panellists. I hope you'll be locking horns, as is your wont. Anyway, we're going to start with some questions from the audience. Our first question is from Julie. Where is Julie? Hi, Julie. Hiya. What's your question?
Should free speech absolutists be defending Gary Lineker?
Oh, yeah, and it's been raging on Twitter, for those stupid enough who are on Twitter. I try to stay off it at the moment. But yeah, as we know, this week the BBC asked Gary Lineker, Match of the Day presenter, to step back because he wrote a tweet which was intended to criticise the government's new small boats bill. But what he did was he likened the language used in the asylum policy to that used in 1930s Germany. And apparently this is what they call a technical breach of impartiality rules. And I've seen lots of people sort of saying, well, where are the free speech absolutists? Why aren't you saying that Gary Lineker needs to be defended? Is that a reasonable point, Leo?
Yeah, well, I've seen some free speech absolutists defend him. I defended him myself. I prefer it when people are free to express their opinions so I can see how ridiculous and stupid their opinions are.
Yes.
I mean, Gary Lineker comparing the Tories to 1930s Germany, that's ridiculous. And it's hugely offensive to Nazis who put a lot of effort into being evil and probably wouldn't like being compared to a multiracial government that's really quite sort of centrist and left-leaning.
It's very strange seeing Suella Braverman, who obviously is the daughter of immigrants, and she wrote this statement saying that she wanted to tackle the problem of illegal immigration and yet retain the capacity to take in people who are fleeing from war and that kind of thing. This doesn't sound very Third Reich to me, if I'm honest.
Was she the woman that got sacked and then reinstated?
That is correct.
Yes, for a security breach.
That's correct.
I'll leave
See,
that
Bruce
there.
is here to bring up the old dirt.
Well, no, but I think it's all relevant, though. I mean, does she know what her job is this week? I mean,
I think she's pretty
Has she
secure.
bought brie? We don't know.
We don't know whether she's bought brie.
We don't know if she's lactose intolerant.
The thing is about this, though, should Gary Lineker be able to say it? I mean, here's my issue on this. When you sign a contract with the BBC, you do have to sign a thing saying, I am not going to make any political statements about the government. And that's part of the contract. And he's getting, what, over £1 million salary?
Yeah, 1.3 million, I think.
Is it a free speech issue?
That's almost as much as he got from Qatar. For presenting. So he's happy to take money from nefarious regimes when it suits him. And also, he was being chased by HMRC for nearly £5 million of unpaid tax. And his political tweeting was used as an excuse by his lawyer to say, look, he's freelance because he's breaching the BBC's terms.
Yes, but he has been wrapped on the knuckles about this before. So it has clarified that he is not meant to do that, according to the contract, the impartiality contract.
And did he pay the tax?
Well, I wouldn't know. You'd have to ask him, wouldn't you? But, I mean, I think there is something very interesting about this, because a lot of people have said to me, you know, why aren't you defending Gary Lineker? Because I consider myself a free speech absolutist. Okay. But I think there is a big difference between someone being sacked for a tweet, which I think shouldn't happen, and someone signing a contract and agreeing not to tweet about certain things, doing so anyway, and then being sacked for breach of contract. I don't think that's a free speech issue. Well, I think it's very, very different.
Has he been sacked?
Well, he was asked to... he wasn't on the last match of the day. And he'll be back next week,
He was just asked to stand down from one episode, as far as I understand it. But, I mean, the BBC shouldn't exist. It's a state broadcaster.
Wow.
It's, well, I mean, why do we need...
people that like EastEnders?
Why do we... They can pay for it. We can move the BBC to a subscription service instead of having this enforced flat tax, which is incredibly regressive. So you've got, like, you know, old ladies on pensions who have to pay the same amount as a millionaire.
Oh, I hear you, sister. My mother is an advocate of that. She's in a foul mood and she will not pay it in a one lump sum. She wants to make them wait, so does it in instalments.
Well, fair enough. I mean, I think the subscription service is quite a good idea. You know, if the BBC is as good as it claims,
it'll have no problem.
It shouldn't have a problem, would it? Anyway,
make more money.
We're going to move on now to the next question. This one's from John. Where is John? Hi, John. How are you?
Good evening. Good evening. My question is about the BBC. Do you approve of the BBC's self-censoring?
Yeah, so this was an interesting story this week. There was this big story saying that the BBC weren't going to broadcast the final episode of the new David Attenborough series. Now, the article, and I read this article, and it said explicitly there were fears of a right-wing backlash from the press and Tory politicians because of this particular episode's focus on the destruction of nature and rewilding projects, which is where you chuck a few buffalo into, like, Milton Keynes or something, isn't it? Yeah. So I think this is a bit of a nonsense, don't you? I mean, this is... is there any... They're still playing the episode on the iPlayer. Yeah. It's just one of those things where they're holding one back so you get a bit of a bonus, right?
And it sort of feels like the Gary Lineker thing. It sort of feels like they've concocted this. Like, nobody was really... They could have let Gary Lineker host Match of the Day. They could have let this episode of the David Attenborough show, whatever it's called, go out. I don't think it is actually called the David Attenborough show.
Quite unimaginative if it was.
But they could have done it. But instead they're saying, oh, no, we can't do it because right-wing people are stopping us. So they're really trying to foment
Which right-wing people are upset about David Attenborough? None of my right-wing friends have said that to me.
I'm a huge fan of Dickie. I think fabulous. And
good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. But did they not keep an episode back of Line of Duty?
They do this. You see, this is what I mean.
It's breadcrumbing, isn't it?
It is bread... That's the phrase. It's breadcrumbing.
Hey, just going back to... Did you see bison or buffalo in Milton Keynes?
Oh, is there a difference?
Well, I think there are concrete cows.
There are concrete cows, you're absolutely right.
There are concrete cows, yes.
Yes, but I don't think that classifies as rewilding. I think the things have to have a pulse, I think, for it. Although they did introduce bison in Kent, I believe.
Did they?
Very bold thing to do.
A very bold thing.
But apparently the bison have been sort of charging their way through forests, opening up all these avenues for other animals, and it's a wonderful thing.
It's a rainforest clearance, basically. It's bad when it happens in the Amazon, but it's good when it happens in Kent.
I don't know. I'd like a few bison around my way.
Well, they're like the Madonna of cattle. They're trailblazers for other species.
It's a lovely way of putting it. Let's move on now to another question. We've got one from Roger. Where is Roger? Hi, Roger.
Hello. Is it a one-horse race for the SNP leadership?
Oh, so this could get ugly. So I've got two, obviously, Scottish people here.
We have Scottish people in the audience.
We've got Scottish people in the audience.
Oh, I was outed on arrival.
Well, it's because
she was quite vicious.
You can smell each other. She spotted the tartan.
Where are you from? And I thought,
oh no. Yeah.
Relax.
And it could get quite ugly because, you know, obviously the politics in Scotland, whenever I've been there, I've just avoided the subject because people get very upset either way, wherever they stand. But this is now the SNP leadership, obviously, since Nicola Sturgeon stood down. Now the Deputy First Minister, John Swinney, backing Humza Yousaf. And I thought Swinney was going for it himself, wasn't it? Because, I mean, he used to be leader.
He used to be the leader, but I think the key is in used to be.
Used to be, past tense.
I don't think they want to bring him back from the dead. Where Ash Regan, who's she's the third wheel in this.
Yes.
You know how the fifth character in Sex and the City was Manhattan? That is Ash Regan, because no one's ever heard of her, really. But talking of coming back from the dead, she's worried that dead people are going to be voting. Did you not see that? That there's an expose to do with something...
Is the health crisis in Scotland that bad that basically zombies are going to be voting?
I think it was something along the lines of something to do with, I don't know, documents that hadn't been shredded.
Well, I imagine it's forgery rather than the idea that the corpses would actually turn up at the ballot box.
I would hope not. That would frighten a lot of people, including my mother.
Not in Scotland.
I mean, it could be hard to tell in certain parts of Glasgow.
Exactly. So what do you... I mean, who do you want to be the leader of the SNP?
I want Humza Yousaf to be the next leader of the SNP because he'd be terrible. He's the continuity candidate that Sturgeon and Swinney want to take over, and he would continue being absolutely dreadful, which would be great for me because I can make fun of it.
Didn't you run against him, Leo?
I did, yeah. I didn't win, thankfully, but yeah, he drafted this authoritarian hate crime bill. He's got an incredibly authoritarian streak. He's always making, beating the sort of race drum. And he accused this nursery of being racist against him because he's, because of his name or whatever.
That's right.
And then it turned out that the nursery was actually run by an Asian person.
Yeah.
So, they probably
that was probably internalised racism or something like that. Right. I mean, Humza Yousaf does terrify me a little bit because his, hate crime bill was one of the most draconian pieces of legislation I've ever seen. I mean, he was talking about how he needs to clamp down on the public performance of a play because neo-Nazis might get together and put on a bit of amateur dramatics to sort of radicalise people.
What was the play?
Well, I want to see it. I mean, sounds fascinating, doesn't it?
I didn't time for Hitler.
Could have been that. So what do you make of that? I mean, he does seem pretty militant and pretty extreme, in some ways.
But in many ways, I think they all seem pretty... They're not as liberal as Nicola was, whatever. And I do feel sorry, I don't know if you've been watching it, but I do feel sorry for Kate Forbes because she's been hauled over the coals because of her religious beliefs, which I don't think are necessarily that relevant. Like, no one has said how they're going to fill a pothole or do anything with the economy and all that kind of thing.
Or tackle the drugs problem.
Well,
that kind
tackle the drugs problem and all that stuff as well. But I don't understand then why they haven't hauled him over the coal, because he's a fairly conservative, religious, believing person.
And he voted against gay marriage?
He didn't vote against, as far as I'm aware. He didn't vote in the bill. And word on the street, and again, I don't know if this is true, it was pressure from his mosque. Whether that is true or not, I don't know.
That was said by an SNP MP, so Alex Neil, sorry, said that. So it's not just a rumour. It's openly stated by an MP.
But isn't the concern with Kate Forbes that she would allow her religious convictions to get in the way when it comes to policy formation, that kind of thing? Now, she's claiming she absolutely wouldn't do that.
Well, she's a Christian. You're allowed to say stuff like that about Christians, whereas Humza, I believe, is a Muslim, so you can't say you'd let your religion get in the way.
Well, you just did.
You'd be being Islamophobic, which is bad. You can say, be as mean as you like about Christians.
But isn't it the case that really it shouldn't matter what people's private beliefs are in politics so long as they don't allow it to inform?
No, completely. But I don't understand why. There's a lot of gay people, funnily enough, I know in Scotland. I've no idea why. And
where did you meet them?
Phone box. And I was cut off. And they were saying things like, if Kate was in power 7 or 8 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to get married. Well, she wasn't in power 7 or 8 years ago, so you still were able to get married. So she hasn't said that she's going to regress any of what she sees as equal rights, human rights. It's just, I don't think they tickle her fancy.
It's a bit like the Tim Farron debate. We had that when he was leader of the Lib Dems, and he said that he didn't agree with gay marriage and that kind of thing because of his Christian beliefs, but he said, I would never impose that onto the party.
I don't think you can.
And can you fully trust somebody who's got really fervently held beliefs? Like if you got a haircut from a Nazi, you might be thinking, well, this, he's just going to cut my hair. He's not. But then you get home, there's a swastika carved into the back of your head. These things can happen.
Has that happened to you? It sounds like a personal anecdote.
That is my excuse.
Wouldn't you be aware?
Yeah, you would.
Yeah. No, sorry. It was a terrible analogy.
It's terrible. Especially because at the end they hold the mirror up. They hold the mirror up and say, do you like that?
Are you still breathing?
And you probably said, yes, it looks fine.
But the swastika's the wrong way round because it's in a mirror.
And that means it's the Hindu symbol of love.
Yeah.
So then it's OK. There, getting his excuses in. Let's get a question now. This is our final question from this section, and this is from Rick. Where is Rick? Hi, Rick.
Hello there. Are old white men offensive?
Yes, terrible. There's been an audit into Welsh monuments. This is, well, you know, obviously all of this is in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement. We've had it in London with the Mayor of London, that kind of thing. And they've decided that statues of historical old white men, such as Lord Nelson, should be removed from public view. And the Welsh government say they want to set right the historical narrative. That's an actual quote. Set right the that sounds like historical revisionism to me. Also, Lord Nelson had one arm. Like, isn't this a bit ableist?
Yeah, it is.
And one eye. Yeah. He was falling apart. He should be allowed a statue, right?
Yeah, and he should get disability benefits as well. And some of this revisionism, I mean, it's so offensive to sort of judge people from hundreds of years ago by the standards of today and, like, take down their statue because they didn't have pronouns in their Twitter bio. It's like they didn't have Twitter because it was the 1800s.
There is that.
It's ridiculous.
What are they going to do?
Some of these people, they're saying they haven't done anything particularly wrong by modern standards, but they will make they could make people from other cultures feel minimised because there's too many old white men. Even though, you know, if you go back several hundred years, it pretty much was white men running this country.
Isn't this a bit patronising to people of other ethnic groups to suppose that they don't understand that the history of Wales, that predominantly the main figures were white men? I mean,
I just don't understand why you... And I get people feeling comfortable and things moving on and stuff, but I don't understand why everything has to be expunged to the history vaults and started again. Surely can we not, you know, pay credence to... Not credence, but pay attention to and learn from it so that we don't make the same mistakes again.
So
but
don't wipe out history.
Well, exactly. That seems a bit odd.
But it's odd as well for the Welsh government. I mean, they're always doing this. They're always playing catch-up. Like, everyone else has already been doing this sort of thing, and they're sort of coming in as well and saying they're going to do it. They've specifically said they might even destroy some of the monuments, which seems a bit extreme to me. They're quite extreme there, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the Taliban. The Taliban blow up monuments and blow up statues.
Yeah.
I
don't think the Welsh government is quite as bad as the Taliban, but I take the point that there is a precedent.
They live in valleys. There's a lot of similarity. Nobody can understand what they're saying.
That was a very good show on MTV, The Valleys.
They dress in rags. This is...
Oh, no, they don't. They don't. I've watched the show The Valleys, honestly. Look at Catherine Zeta. Do you see her in rags? I don't think so.
Will they put a statue of Catherine Zeta-Jones up instead of Lord Nelson?
Is she a white man?
No.
No? Well, she can stay.
You can have it. And Shirley Bassey. Why not? Why not? Not Tom Jones, because he's been cancelled, hasn't he? Anyway, after the break on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be speaking to the feminist campaigner and writer Julie Bindel about the launch of the Lesbian Project. See you in a few minutes.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. This week saw the launch of a not-for-profit organisation which is said to be dedicated to the understanding and enhancement of lesbian lives in the UK. The Lesbian Project is the brainchild of tennis great Martina Navratilova, former university lecturer Kathleen Stock, and feminist campaigner and writer Julie Bindel. And I'm delighted to say Julie's here with me now. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, the Lesbian Project, what's the genesis of this? Why did it start? What were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking a couple of years ago, why is it that the word lesbian and gay, or the terms lesbian and gay, have become all one word? And then, of course, we'd been subsumed within what has been known as more like a unbreakable Wi-Fi code than a useful acronym of LGBTQIA+. Nobody
you left
knows
that
what...
Two-Spirit, 2S as well, isn't it?
Two-Spirit.
Yes, exactly.
And nobody knows what the extra Q is. Nobody cares, quite frankly. And I thought to myself, well, you know, when I came out as a lesbian in the 1970s, it was a dirty word. It was a word that I had to get used to saying. I would call myself gay or say I was bisexual because lesbian was really terrible. There were no good role models at all for lesbians. There were some for gay men that weren't exactly positive, but they were not grotesque.
Yes.
So we were portrayed as sexual predators, butch as hell, so butch you could donate to a sperm bank. I mean, really grim stuff. And now where are we? Whereas there's more pressure from young women, or rather on young women, to identify as queer, which is their choice. But women have told me that they like the word lesbian, but they've been told in their university LGBTQIA+ groups, usually headed by some man, that the word lesbian is so last season.
That's really interesting that that's now become either a dirty word again or unfashionable in some way, because that long acronym, whatever we want to call it, LGBTQIA+ or whatever, some of the stats coming out of, for instance, America are suggesting that a significant proportion, something up to 40% of young people are identifying into that category.
Yes.
Most of them statistically must be straight.
That's right. And so the problem that I have as a lesbian isn't that other people want to identify as queer, as asexual, as sapiosexual, as aromantic, as all of those other ridiculous, quite frankly, groups that suggest that they have some kind of oppression.
Yes.
I mean, for example, Ruth Hunt from Stonewall took time some years ago, when she was still director, to say that there were groups that weren't being best served within the Rainbow Coalition, and pointed out asexuals and aromantics. Well, who loses their flat? Who loses their family for not actually wanting to fall in love, for example? But what was happening with young women being told that lesbian was a dirty word was that they were, of course, therefore identifying out of that category. And when we have research such as that you've cited, where 40% of all people in a particular age group say that they're part of this big Rainbow Coalition, obviously that doesn't mean that they're either lesbian or gay. It means that they can be straight people identifying as queer. So what we want to know, and why I went to Kathleen Stock and then Martina Navratilova with the idea, which they were thrilled about, is where are the lesbians? What is the research about lesbian life, of which there's very little and hasn't been since the 1970s or 80s? What happens, for example, when we marry or divorce? What happens to our children when we come out as lesbians? What about inter-violent relationships? What about violence from external forces, in other words, anti-lesbian violence? You'll note that the term homophobia is used to cover us as well.
Yes.
And actually that means anti-gay violence. Where's the research on our employment opportunities, on discrimination, on our health? And we're women, so we can't possibly usefully be lumped in with gay men when it comes to those issues.
So are you saying that the proliferation of these various identity groups has actually muddied the waters and made it harder for lesbians to work together and be activists?
Yes, so I absolutely support the right of anyone to have an identity, whatever they choose. I don't, as a lesbian, want to be lumped in with minor attracted persons,
No,
MAP, which is the latest addition to this Rainbow Coalition, which means child abusers.
Yes.
I don't want to be lumped in with heterosexual kinksters, in other words, men that like strangling women during sex. That isn't an oppression, that is not a sexual identity that has any meaning. So as a lesbian, what I want to know is how do we navigate our way through lives in a happy way, in a way that's positive for us, and how do we come out? What happens to us when we come out? What about our health issues that's distinct from gay men and other groups, without saying that we don't want those other groups to have their own research and have their own identity.
And that's very interesting, is because obviously the history of lesbianism involves a specific history of a certain type of oppression, and it seems to trivialise it. If you bring in, I mean, Stonewall did a thing about Aromantic Awareness Week, right? And an aromantic is someone who just doesn't like flowers on Valentine's Day or walks by the river.
I must be aromantic.
Right, OK. But that's not an oppressed group.
It really
no one's
isn't.
ever been kicked through the streets for being aromantic.
Exactly. And, as a lesbian, I see very keenly, and I support my gay brothers, and I want to march alongside my gay brothers when there's legislation or issues that faces both groups together, and I'll always do that. And I have many gay male friends, of course. And it's through talking to gay men that we understand that we have very different needs and lifestyle choices. And our health issues are very different. And, of course, we are coerced into heterosexual marriage way more than our gay men. Think about lesbians living within communities such as religious communities, working class communities such as the one that I was from, minority ethnic communities, where it's much harder to say, I'm a lesbian and I don't wish to marry a man and I don't wish to have children with men. Now, of course, for gay men that can be difficult, but there are very few gay men I know of that have been forced into or coerced into marriage.
Yes.
It's much easier for men to come out than it is for lesbians. And that's not to say we don't want it to be easier for gay men. Gay men have an oppression, it's called homophobia. But for lesbians, we are punishment raped. We are told that we are only lesbians because we're too ugly to rape. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've been told I'm only a lesbian because no man will have me, that I was thinking I might as well form a rock band called Too Ugly to Rape. I mean, it's absolute misogyny, and that's what lesbians have to put up with on a daily basis.
But they're also now having to put up with this new wave of oppression coming from gender ideologues, because we've had Nancy Kelly say that women who don't want to sleep with individuals who have penises are akin to sexual racists.
Well, you've had Lucy Massoud on the programme before, who is a former firefighter, was part of the Grenfell inquiry. She's a black lesbian who's now a lawyer, and she was on a dating site and saw that there were many men who were identifying as trans women who said they were lesbians. And when she complained and said... Well, in fact, she didn't even complain in the first instance. What she said was she was interested in, you can tick... I mean, I'm too old to have been on online dating. But anyway, she was on it.
Never too old, you.
No, it's true, actually. But anyway, she was on this site and she was asked what her preferences were. And, of course, it's love going to the cinema, like going for walks in the countryside. And she said, actually like female only.
Yes, same-sex attracted.
Same-sex attracted.
Yeah.
And she was kicked off the dating site for that. And so... for lesbians, we're very, very clear that lesbians are female and that we have, very nicely, of course, rejected sexual relationships and romantic relationships with men. and that we should be able to have our own identity that is a proud identity, where we don't have to apologise to people for it, and we don't have to pretend that we're just making do with women because we couldn't find the right man. All of those old tropes are coming back to haunt us now, and that's why we need research, advocacy, and we need some proper statistics about how many lesbians there are, how many have children, what's happening when we divorce, is there any violence within our own relationships, and what issues do we have to face in the workplace, for example.
People watching will be astonished, and they almost won't believe the idea of a lesbian being kicked off a lesbian dating site for being a lesbian sounds so ridiculous, but there is this new kind of shaming people who are attracted exclusively to members of their own sex. I spoke to Dennis Kavanagh of the Gay Men's Network, who said that there have been similar experiences with men. This is a new thing that you're going to have to deal with, but you will get flack from people saying you're being bigoted or something like this.
See, we used to have flack back in the 70s and 80s from very vicious anti-lesbian bigots who would say, you know, you should be locked up, you can't be near our children, there's something wrong with you, you're perverted. And I came through all of that as a feminist, as a lesbian. I got through that with my sisters. I got through that with some help from those gay men that understood. And we went through all of those pain barriers. And here we are today being told that it's bigoted to speak out on behalf of a particular group, which is lesbians. And I refuse to accept that, because we're not taking anything away from anyone else. What we're saying is our needs have been ignored for a long time, that we need proper research on our lives, on our opportunities, on the challenges that we face. And we are not saying to other people that they don't have a right to do exactly the same. But we are the forgotten letter in the long list of LG blah, blah, blah.
Well, we don't have any time left, but could you just quickly let us know where we can find out more information about the Lesbian Project?
Yes, we have a website, and it's project_lesbian, and you'll find us on Twitter, and you'll find us if you search Google for the website, I'm sure. And of course, you can have a look and see if Kathleen Stock and I have tweeted anything from the website account. I'm sure you can find us easily.
Fantastic. Julie Bindel, thanks very much for joining me. After the break on Free Speech Nation, we'll be discussing the row of the week. That's Gary Lineker's enforced step back from Match of the Day after tweeting his thoughts on the new asylum policy. See you in a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my beautiful panel, Leo Kearse and Bruce Devlin. We're going to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you're sitting at home, weeping on the carpet, you've got problems, just email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk. We will do our level best to answer your issues. So now on to a story that's dominated the headlines all week, the BBC's row with Gary Lineker. Kicking off with a tweet by Lineker in reference to Rishi Sunak's new small boats bill. Lineker wrote, "This is just an immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in language that is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 1930s. And I'm out of order? But is he? Well, to discuss this with me, I have lawyer, writer and legal editor for Spiked Online, Luke Gettos, and historian and journalist Nigel Jones. Thank you both for joining me. So I'm going to come to you first, Nigel. Is this a freedom of speech issue? Should Gary Lineker be able to say whatever he wants on his own private Twitter feed?
Well, freedom of speech is never absolute. You can't say or you can't shout fire in a crowded theatre. But as far as I understand it, Lineker has broken the rules, the guidance rules that the BBC sets to ensure its own impartiality on this occasion, as he has several times in the past.
So this is really a contractual issue. Luke, is that not a fair point that, you know, Gary Lineker is paid an awful lot of money by the BBC. He signed a contract saying he will preserve impartiality on his social media presence. Why is it that people are now saying that free speech absolutists ought to defend him?
Well, I think on the one hand, he was a contractor. He was subject to a contract with our national broadcaster, and what he said was unbelievably stupid. It was a foolish thing to say. But I can understand why the BBC has concerns, and even if you are a free speech absolutist, as I like to think of myself as, we would never argue that free speech is completely without consequence. Indeed, that's why free speech matters. You stand by what you say, and what you say is held up against you. You have to defend it in the public sphere. And the fact is that what Gary Lineker said was indefensible. I think he should be allowed to say it, but he can't be expected to proceed with absolutely no consequences arising from what he's saying. The BBC have taken an unusual decision. I mean, I think it is... I said on Thursday on another podcast that they would never...
I think we're losing Luke there. Let's bring Nigel in here. Can I ask you, Nigel, about this idea of, you know, what he actually said, and why is it so offensive?
It is extremely offensive, particularly to the victims of Nazism and the Holocaust, to compare a democratically elected government such as we have in this country with Hitler's government in the 30s. That is just crass, completely ignorant, historically ignorant, and offensive.
But is there a difference? I mean, could it not be the case that what we should do, therefore, is criticise him, Nigel, rather than just try and get him sacked?
I don't think he should be automatically sacked for that. And I did criticise him in an article, and people have criticised him. I'm not going to take a view on whether the BBC should sack him or not, but this isn't a first offence. He has frequently gone out of order and broken BBC rules on impartiality. And whether he's a BBC employee or is just a freelance on a contract, then the BBC must decide for themselves whether he goes or stays.
So let's talk about this idea of the BBC impartiality clause. Is it right that they should have that? I mean, shouldn't it be the case that the BBC say, obviously on air our presenters should be impartial, but in their own private Twitter?
No, that would be very schizophrenic to be one person on air and completely another person in your social media profiles. That's ridiculous. No, you are an integrated one single person with your views, and we all know now what Lineker's views are.
Yes.
He's welcome to say that to his however many followers, millions of followers he's got, but he is the face or one of the faces of the BBC, and he should be more responsible. And even one of his own close friends, I believe Andrew Castle, said this morning that he knows that Lineker has regretted making this remark about comparing Nazis with our government, but I don't think he will go public and admit that he was wrong.
Well, I suppose a lot of people would say, well, he's a football commentator, so, we don't look to him for political prowess. We're not really worried about what he thinks about politics.
And that would be fine. I would go to him for advice on football, but he shouldn't speak so publicly and so influentially about a subject that he clearly knows nothing about, i.e. the history of the Third Reich.
I mean, that's clear, isn't it, that he doesn't... I mean, this comparison was absolutely ludicrous.
Absolutely absurd, and it's also offensive and insulting to the two politicians who are pushing this measure to try and reduce or control illegal immigration, Rishi Sunak and Home Secretary Suella Braverman, because I'm not sure whether Lineker's noticed, they are both the children of immigrants, albeit legal immigrants.
Yes, he seems not to have made this distinction, which Suella Braverman was very clear in making, in terms of the distinction between the illegal migration and those who were trafficked here, and those who are fleeing war and persecution, which she explicitly said in her statement she wanted to help those people. I don't remember the Nazis ever saying that kind of thing.
No. I mean, there is absolutely no comparison. And Suella Braverman has not called illegal immigrants and compared them to rats like the Nazis did to the Jews, for example.
Yes.
Suella Braverman is also, I believe, married to a Jewish husband, and that just adds to the offence that Lineker caused.
Yes. I believe we've got Luke Gittos back now down the line, so maybe if I could just ask Luke, where do you stand on what Lineker actually said? And, you've said that it was an indefensible thing, but what's so wrong with someone on their own private Twitter saying that kind of thing? Because, as I said to Nigel, this is a football commentator, not a political commentator.
Well, that's true, but he is a football commentator on our national broadcaster, and I think that has to be taken into account. I also think it's a shame that we've spent this week talking about Gary Lineker when we do face a real problem in the channel, and I think it would be useful to talk about the substance of this issue and whether Suella Braverman's plans fix the problem. Because I think, oddly, it fits both sides, the way we deal with this problem at the moment. Both sides are happy for this to be a culture war-y issue that ends up being unresolved. The Tories' legislative plan is not going to solve the problem. Suella Braverman herself said this plan has a 50-50% chance of being stopped by the courts. This is the second of their legislative proposals that they proceeded with knowing that it's not going to work. Witness, for example, the Rwanda partnership that was held at the European on a previous occasion. So neither side want to solve this problem, and both sides are very happy for it to be batted around in this political way. I think really we need to recognise that the small boats are a problem. The Tories' plans are objectionable. Lineker is right to raise the fact that they are wrong. They go against a number of key tenets of our legal system, detaining people without representation, subjecting them to summary deportation. These are things that within our English justice system we are not used to and we should not welcome. But that's not to say that we should adopt the opposite view, which has seen reams of human rights lawyers over the last week getting dangerously close to using things like the Refugee Convention and the European Convention on Human Rights to defend the absolutely appalling trade in human misery, which is the human trafficking which takes place across the Channel. We've got to find a practical solution to the boat problem, and neither side seem interested in doing so.
We're just short on time, so I'm going to bring in Nigel Jones there just to ask, what do you make of Luke Gittos's view there, that this is actually a distraction, and actually all of this conversation about Gary Lineker's tweet has effectively trivialised what is a very significant debate that we need to be having?
Yes, that's true, but that's just a consequence of our celebrity culture in which we give the views of celebrities albeit in this case completely ignorant and ill-informed views, perhaps more weight than they deserve.
Very well put. Well, thanks both for joining me, Luke Gittos and Nigel Jones. Really appreciate it. And after the break on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be speaking with Elnaz Saba Bocek about the suspected poisonings of Iranian schoolgirls. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. While the West celebrated International Women's Day this week, news emerged from Iran that more than 1,000 girls in schools across the country appear to have suffered mild poison attacks since November. Some observers say it could be part of an extremist response, perhaps even state-endorsed, to the protests led by women and girls since the death of Mahsa Amini in September. So to discuss this, I'm joined from California by Elnaz Saba Bocek, a journalist who lived in Iran for 28 years. Elnaz, thanks very much for joining me today. So I'd like to ask you to begin with,
Hi,
what do you think...
Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. Now, under the current regime in Iran, women in education is not an unusual thing. Apparently, since 2011, women have outnumbered men on university campuses. So why would they be now seen as a potential target, and by whom?
Well, I honestly don't think they are targeting women in education. I think this is a tactical act by some people in the government to scare people from coming to protest. Because as you might have known, beside the people in the street, we had many students, high school students, middle schoolers, and university students that were in the front line of the protests. They were in the street. There was many videos of these students in their schools taking off their scarves, tearing down the picture of the supreme leader from their books, walking on them, the way Islamic Republic for many years had Iranians walk on the flag of UK and US, and kind of returning and saying, we actually don't want this. And you're going to realize that these are the students who grew up under the Islamic Republic. They tried to brainwash these people. And now these same students, some of them as young as 12, coming and saying, we don't want this regime, we don't want this forced hijab, we don't want to be brainwashed, and they want out. So I feel this is more like a tactic to scare the students, to scare their family who let the students do that kind of stuff, as opposed to like, oh, we don't want the girls to get more education.
And I think it's really important to reiterate, all of this came about because of what happened to Mahsa Amini, who was killed in custody with the morality police. And we're learning more and more about this, that, that she was beaten, and then the morality police failed to contact the emergency services for 45 minutes. And all of this has obviously sparked out this protest, led largely by young Iranian women. And they obviously put themselves in the firing line, don't they, when they do this against this kind of regime? It's very risky, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Like the people the government shot at people with live ammunitions, mostly in Kurdistan and Balochistan provinces. They shot at people with pellet guns, with lead bullets, and they aimed at their people's faces. So we have many people who have lost their sight because of this. And they did this in the protest, and then they would arrest people who go to the hospitals. So you didn't have a chance to get a medical attention right after you've been attacked by a brutal force. And people have been bitten. The people who have been arrested during these protests have been tortured really badly. The CNN had a detailed report of like rape using as a weapon against these people. And we have seen long sentences to these people. Like some got about Amnesty International said about 28 people were in the risk of execution in November, and 4 people actually have been executed for participating in the protests. One of them, what they did, they had blocked the street, and they had a cold weapon that resulted in a non-fatal accident, and still they were executed. So harsh punishment for all this, and I see that as a continuation of like trying to put a damp on these protests.
And we should say, when it comes to the poisoning, we don't know for sure who is doing this, why they are doing this, but it's not helped, is it, that the Iranian regime really does clamp down on investigative journalism and reporting. To get to the bottom of this is not going to be easy, is it?
No, they have arrested a blogger, they've arrested a journalist, they're trying to control their information as much as they can. And what's funny, last week there was a video of 4 or 5 girls dancing with the song Calm Down in a neighborhood in Tehran, and they have already looked at the cameras around this area to try to find these girls who have done nothing except dancing. But these poisoning has been going on for 3 months. They've been happening in 103 cities across 29 provinces, so it's widespread. It's not just a single incident. Some statistics say that about 300 schools or dormitories have been affected by this. So this is a big action. This is not a small thing. And they were quiet for 3 months. First said, oh, this is not happening. Then they said, oh, this is, mass hysteria. This is not a true thing. So they try to do everything as opposed to like looking to investigate this. And then I think a few days ago, they said, oh, they arrested about 100 people. They showed, we don't know who these people are. There's no details about how they did this. They showed a forced confession of 2 of these people on TV. And these are, I'm going to explain this confession. This is a girl. So the accused of 5 of these accused are a student, her father, and a couple of her friends. And we are talking about a teenage girl they are blaming this. And they show a confession. She's sitting with her back to the camera with a hair cover. So you pretty much don't know who's talking. And she goes like, yeah, I called my friend and asked, hey, do you have gas? As opposed to like, they're not buying fireworks. This is like a neural gas you're talking about, and so the girl explains like, oh, I called my friend. They called their friend, and oh yeah, they had gas, so we got it. It's such a ridiculous show put on display, and and the interviewer goes like, well, who's this flame? Who was this person you got the gas from? Reza. Who's Reza? There is no qualification, no detail whatsoever about, like, no real investigative journalism about who did this. And they are trying to already blame some people. The man they blamed works in a hospital. They caught him recording a film about when the girls were taken to the hospital, which is, could be used as an evidence against the regime. So they have arrested them, and they're blaming this person about 100 others. But there's no more information about this out yet.
So we don't have transparency, we don't have accountability. Very, very quickly then, do you feel that since the government has tried to ignore all of this, there have been a sharp rise in executions? Are the protests going to quieten down? If you could just answer in very quickly, because we're out of time.
So there's weekly protests happening in Zahedan. People gather at night and they chant "Death to Dictator" in the middle of the night on the rooftops. And there was some marches during.
I'm sorry, we have to stop you there. We are out of time, but it's good to hear that the protests are going onward. Great. Don't go away. A lot more now to come between 9 and the end of the show, including a woman in Germany who is in love with a Boeing 737. See you in a few minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, but let's get a news update first from Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, let's get you up to date with the headlines from the GB newsroom. Match of the Day 2 will run for just 14 minutes tonight as fellow presenters continue to show solidarity with Gary Lineker after his suspension by the BBC. Mr Lineker dodged questions from reporters regarding his future earlier. However, his eldest son says he thinks the presenter will return to Match of the Day but won't ever back down. The Six Nations coverage went ahead as scheduled earlier, but 5 Live Radio Sport was radically altered for both days of the weekend, and Match of the Day 2 will have no presenter, pundits or commentary. Former BBC executive Roger Bolton says the controversy's diverting attention away from the real issue.
It's this argument about what is impartiality and who must be impartial that is a wider question. Of course, the other thing that's happening here is the political parties, particularly the governing parties, see this as a wonderful opportunity in the culture wars to create trouble and divert attention from the fundamental issue here, which is illegal immigration, which is extraordinarily difficult to deal with.
The Prime Minister's flying to California right now to discuss the AUKUS defence deal between the UK, the US and Australia. It is hoped that a deal to supply British nuclear-powered submarines to Australia will be confirmed following a meeting between Sunak and his American and Australian counterparts. Mr Sunak's also expected to unveil a new review of defence and foreign policy, which will set out the UK's approach to threats from Moscow and an increasingly assertive China. The start-up Bank of London has submitted a formal proposal for the UK arm of the collapsed Silicon Valley Bank. The bank's UK subsidiary will be put into insolvency this evening. The government says it will do everything it can to protect UK tech companies caught up in the collapse of the bank. The companies could start to experience difficulties with cash flow on Monday morning. But the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says the Treasury is working hard to make sure they don't run out of money. It is the biggest failure of a US bank since 2008 and is now under US government control. The health secretaries criticised junior doctors for failing to call off their strike action, which starts on Monday. Writing in The Telegraph, Steve Barclay described the 72-hour walkout as incredibly disappointing. The British Medical Association, though, has dubbed Mr Barclay's recent offer to negotiate as a feeble attempt to stall. They also point out he did not show up to talks on Friday. It's expected to affect many services, including A&E, cancer and maternity care. And Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is the favourite to win the Best Picture at the Oscars, which get underway in Hollywood a little bit later. That film, though, will face stiff competition from The Banshees of Inisherin, which has a record 9 nominations, record for an Irish film, and All Quiet on the Western Front. Bill Nighy's up for Best Actor, and Andrea Riseborough is up for the Best Actress for her role in the movie To Leslie. It gets underway at midnight. TV online and DAB Plus Radio, this is GB News. Now, it's back to Andrew and Free Speech Nation.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So let's get some questions from our audience. Our first question is from John. Where is John? Hello.
Hi. Have the organisers of the Oscars lost the plot?
Well, yes. So the winner of this year's Oscar for Best Actress could be the last, because the industry is moving towards gender neutrality, and there's lots of pressure on the Oscars now to follow other people like the Grammys. I think the Brits did it, because Sam Smith said they should. Do you think this is a wise move?
Yeah, I think it's great because it'll create another car crash. Like the Brits went gender neutral because Sam Smith kicked up fuss. He said, but I'm non-binary. Even though he's obviously a bloke. He's like, I'm non-binary because, you know, I like to dress up like a plucked chicken. And so they said, OK, we'll make it non-binary. We'll make you happy, whatever. And they made it non-binary. And then all the nominations were men. And then Owen Jones popped up being like, we need separate categories for women because they're not represented. It's like, that's what you had. When are you people going to be happy? Will you ever stop moaning about stuff?
So, but there is a case here, isn't there, that when it comes to acting, you see, because I understand in sports you need to divide by sex because, you know, men run faster than women and lift things more. That's my sporting knowledge then.
OK.
Yeah, but when it comes to...
Thank you for that.
Yeah. That's my biology
Do I
GCSE,
feel
not
anointed?
wasted. Yeah, you should. But what about when it comes to acting? Because surely there's no real difference between a man acting and a woman acting. Shouldn't they be lumped together?
I think it was Dame Joanna Lumley that had said that she, I don't know the word she found it to be regrettable was, but she felt that if women were up against men in a category, the men would go to the top, if you see what I mean.
Well, that's what happened in the Brits.
She felt... But then was he not on the one show? Sorry, were they not on the one show? Sam Smith saying that they wanted to be a Fisher them.
A Fisher them, yes.
Yes.
He does talk gibberish. He's known to do that.
And
yes.
It was a highly unusual jumper, but we'll move on. So what Joanna was saying was that she feels that she has more of a chance winning in a female category than she does in a mixed category that includes some men. So it's kind of like, well, if that's how you feel, then what's the point, and why not create new categories?
So we could have multiple categories, couldn't we?
Yes,
we could have
exactly.
categories by height. Couldn't we? I mean, just go the full hog.
Just every person could be in their own category.
And that way you definitely get a win.
Yeah, which is surely what all this is striving for.
With regard to height, then, would Tom Cruise be in his own category?
But
he would have the Lifetime Achievement Award.
He would, but he
being that height.
He normally stands on a box, though, so people can't notice.
Does he?
Yeah, I believe so.
Not a soapbox.
Who knows? Anyway, I hope he doesn't sue me for that. We're going to move on to another question now. This one is from Richard. Hi, Richard.
Hello, Andrew. I see you're wearing a Trumpian tie this evening.
I am.
But do you think that Donald is past his sell-by date?
Ah, interesting. No, the tie isn't a reference to Trump. It was the last tie left on my shelf, to be honest. But I need to go shopping.
Why did you have the MAGA hat as well?
Oh, that's true. Well, you told me not to wear that, which was a very good call. Yeah, so this is... Well, it's interesting because we now have Ron DeSantis, who's sort of poised... he's saying he's probably going to run. Well, lots of people are thinking that he's going to run. But this is going to be very interesting because, you know, Donald Trump has such support with the GOP, has such power, such clout. But the truth is, if you get someone like Ron DeSantis, who has so much more energy, and let's face it, he's just younger.
Yeah, he's younger.
Put him up against Biden.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? I mean, that's going to be a car crash.
Yeah, it'd be an absolute landslide for Ron DeSantis. Also, Ron DeSantis has a sort of track record in winning elections, which Trump doesn't. He won one election. And the rest of the time, he's not really done that well. And although
he would say he won 2 elections.
Yeah,
he's been complaining about it ever since.
But then you've got to make it actually happen in real life.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, Trump really energises the hardcore base.
Yes.
So I think he was talking about. I mean, I love Trump. He's just so funny. He was talking about instituting public guillotines, which I thought, I'd vote for that just to see what happens.
For goodness sake, I mean, look, I'm with you. He is funny, and I do miss him on Twitter.
He can't sort of appeal to the sort of majority, whereas Ron DeSantis could.
Well, this is the point, isn't it? That although Trump does energise a lot of people, he also alienates twice as many, doesn't he? Even from his own side. So really, I mean, if the Republicans are thinking carefully about this, Ron DeSantis, he's got a great track record of turning Florida around. I mean, it's a huge success story there. He can actually govern.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think his age is a big part of it as well, because they're so used to having, their, leaders are so much older than the people that we have here, whether we like them or not. But he is, 47, 46, something like that?
He's a baby.
So he's a young man. He's a child in comparison to Biden.
He's an embryo compared to Biden. I mean,
a grandchild.
But Biden can't talk. I mean, that's also an issue.
Really?
Yeah, he's struggling, isn't he, to just sort of string a sentence
together. And Ron
together.
DeSantis is so young that Biden would actually like to sniff his hair.
Well, let's see what happens. We'll come back to this. I'm not going there. Anyway, let's get another question from Laura. Where's Laura? Hi, Laura.
Yeah. So my question is, does it pay to work when you have kids?
Ah, yes. Jeremy Hunt has vowed to help reduce the cost of childcare at Wednesday's budget as part of a wider drive to help people into work. And this, the Chancellor saying that the high cost is stopping some parents taking a job. He did, however, suggest there's no scope for tax cuts. I mean, Bruce, this is just him trying to win votes, isn't it? It's pretty smart, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a popular thing. I mean, obviously, I can't have children. My insides are all wrong, so it's not necessarily
sorry to hear that.
applicable to me. No, it's fine. I've dealt with it many years ago. But the fact of the matter is, I think it is a smart thing, and I think he's seen being a bit more kind of parental-friendly, because I think it genuinely is. It's a barrier for a lot of people with
It is. I mean, in France, they pay a lot of money to help you look after you kids. I mean, you've got a new baby.
I do have a new baby, and I'm really looking forward to the Tories coming through on this and paying for childcare, because it's very expensive in the UK, and in Germany Germany and France and other European countries, the amount you spend on childcare is much less. But I mean, for a while now, we've had a problem in the UK and other Western countries that people aren't having enough kids to replace the population. I mean, our fertility rate is about 1.5 to 1.7, and it needs to be around 2.1 to maintain a stable population. So politicians have looked at mass immigration to sort of top up the population. But I mean, you know, call me old-fashioned. I think the main route for immigration into the UK should be through women's birth canals. And I think it's good. It's good to encourage. A lot of people aren't having kids because they can't afford childcare, they can't afford a house. And I think if we reset some of that, then we won't need.
Are they not just not having kids because kids are annoying and really expensive?
But I don't know, that sounds kidophobic.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I know, I have loads of kids, I've got loads.
I think other people's kids are very annoying, but when you actually have your own kid, you'd be amazed that they're not that annoying.
Really?
Yeah.
Very interesting. OK, we're going to move on to another question. This is from Pete. Where's Pete? Hi, Pete.
Should junior doctors pour coffee for a living instead?
Oh, yeah. So junior doctor leaders... So they've started this advertising campaign, and this is ahead of another strike. This is a strike over pay, obviously. And they're saying that they are claiming that some NHS staff could earn more serving coffee. And they actually specify at Pret a Manger. I don't know if Pret have particularly good wages. Anyway, there's going to be this 3-day walkout on Monday. The BMA is saying that newly qualified medics are earning just over £14 an hour.
So apparently Pret are paying you $14.10, and as a junior doctor you get $14.9.
OK, so it's not that much of a difference.
No,
but I would imagine being a barista at Pret is easier than being a junior doctor, isn't it? Less stressful.
Think?
I would have thought so.
I don't think so. I think people in coffee shops are very rude.
No, and actually, it is...
I do. I think they are. They're very rude. I mean,
they could be doctors then.
Well, who knows?
And it is difficult to get the foam just right. But I still stand by this, that I think junior doctors deserve more. Because it's a tough job, and we do need them.
That's true, but they did choose to do that job.
They did, yes.
I don't think anyone made them. No, and I'm not speaking out against them. I'm just, you know...
But it is vocational. It's vocational, you know. But they have a calling to help people, help the sick. No?
Do you think?
Am I just being sentimental?
But also, it's career progression. I mean, if you're working in Pret, what's your progression? Like working in Greggs? Like if you're a junior doctor, you're progressing to being a mature doctor or whatever they're called. You know, and they get paid a lot more.
I think Greggs would be a step down.
I agree. I agree.
I've seen that documentary and I've seen what's been swept up.
Well, the thing with Pret is they've got this subscription service where you get like 5 coffees, so they're just rammed, filling these cups of coffee for all these people who are basically getting free coffee.
But you're dead against the strikes anyway, aren't you, Liam?
Oh yeah, nobody should ever go on strike. I mean, just quit your job.
Or maybe the government should pay the NHS properly.
Or maybe we should replace the NHS with some sort of system that works where people get paid. I mean, you don't see doctors in America complaining they don't get paid enough.
No, but you don't see poor people in America getting decent health care.
Yeah, there's a lot of upsides to it.
We could replace the NHS with the BBC.
We could do that.
Yeah.
Why has no one thought of that before?
I don't know. It's not been in doctors.
No. Call it VHS.
Very good. OK, we're going to go on now to a question from one of our viewers at home. Neil asks, should sitting MPs be more careful about what they say online? And he's alluding here to a recent tweet by MP Andrew Bridgen, in which he claims, let's have a look, he says, I can confirm that during my visit to Washington, D.C. last Christmas, New Year, I was informed that the US DOD were responsible for both the virus and the vaccines. Fort Detrick was named, also a facility in Canada. Now, so Andrew Bridgen, who had the whip taken away from him, as we all know, we covered that story, he's now making this claim, this massive claim, that both the virus and the vaccine are effectively bioweapons from America. Now, call me old-fashioned, but I'd like to see some evidence for that. What do you think, Liam?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like he's trying to rehabilitate his image as a conspiracy theorist very much. But then, I mean, we don't know. We just saw the lab leak theory. Now the FBI have come out and said, yeah, it probably did come from the coronavirus probably did come from the lab in Wuhan. Previously, that was a far-right conspiracy theory. So maybe next week we'll see that actually, yes, this is true.
But that's dangerous, isn't it? Because, and I take your point that, you know, when things are sort of completely dismissed and turn out to have an element of truth to them, then people start mistrusting everything. But then people become even more credulous and start believing absolutely anything without evidence.
Yeah.
And we need to have, surely, when you make claims that are this big, it is surely irresponsible not to present the evidence that you have.
No,
not just, I heard it from some bloke in America.
No, well, that's a bit like saying I was down the pub last night, you'll never guess what happened.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
yeah, no, I mean, is that not libelous? Can you not be arrested for that?
Well, for saying, well, about some bloke in the pub, probably.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, because we don't know what you did.
But like I say, I'm not the sort of person who wants to dismiss any theories, but I also don't want people to just jump to believing any kind of thing, because on the flimsiest, not even evidence, just hearsay posted on Twitter. I think it's
and previously you'd say, well, he's a member of Parliament, he's he's a man of good standing, and we should trust what he says, but probably not anymore.
What's happening at the moment, though, that this seems to be growing more generally, is that people are, they're fed up of being lied to. Lots of things happen, like you say with Wuhan, that whole thing was dismissed and then turned out probably to be true, and so people are just believing absolutely anything. And I think people need to, don't we have to think critically about everything? We need to get that skill back again. Don't you think, Bruce?
I think it's because a lot of people are perhaps lazy.
Yeah.
And they want to be seen as saying the right thing in a mix. You've heard that thing, I'm not really that intelligent, but I know enough to get by at a party.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people want to remain smart and look smart and be seen to be, aligning themselves to the right cause. So they'll just go with whatever the populist thing is, whether that's conspiratorial or not.
Is it just Twitter? Is it just that politicians should stay off Twitter, maybe?
I think politicians should maybe have a week off.
Yeah.
a long, hard think to themselves.
Well, the other one is WhatsApp. Politicians always go on WhatsApp and always say these things. They must know that these things are going to come out.
Well, the key thing with WhatsApp is if a journalist who has a track record of exposing things asks for all your WhatsApp records, don't give them your WhatsApp records.
Also, as well, don't pop into the jungle.
Yeah.
Well, that's a separate issue.
There's that, but there's been a lot of politicians over the years that seem to, well, I think Matt's slightly different, but there was a lot of sitting MPs that I think forgot that they were sitting MPs and then ended up in the Versace hotel and then in the jungle, and you think, oh, right, so you're not
Are you saying you'd like your MPs to be in Parliament doing their job rather than eating bugs?
Kind of, yeah.
I don't know about that. I mean, I quite enjoyed it when George Galloway was on Big Brother. I thought
dressed as a cat.
He did dress as a cat briefly.
Yeah.
No, he didn't dress as a cat, he impersonated a cat.
Right.
And I think that's a lot more dignified.
Yeah, he did ask, would you like me to be the pussycat?
He did. He asked Rula Lenska.
He did.
Yes.
Who's some of the best hair in show business.
Hasn't she just? And on that note, we're going to go to a break now. But after the break on Free Speech Nation, when is saying sorry not enough? I'm going to be asking a royal expert if the palace owes a more formal apology to Ngozi Fulani. See you in 3 minutes.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go. But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Earlier this week, Ngozi Fulani, remember her, revealed that she is temporarily stepping down as CEO of her charity Sister Space, months after a former lady-in-waiting to Queen Elizabeth made unacceptable comments to her at a Buckingham Palace event. Lady Susan Hussey repeatedly asked Fulani, "Where do you come from?" and touched her hair during the palace reception. In stepping down, Ngozi Fulani asked why it's been so hard for the palace to say sorry, saying an apology isn't an apology when you have to ask for it. So joining me now to discuss this is historian and royal commentator Rafe Hadel-Manku. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you, thank you.
So for anyone who's forgotten, could you perhaps give us a précis of what happened with this case?
Yes, so this is rather bizarre. Just when the palace thought that this ridiculous episode was behind them and Fulani had been consigned to last year's chip paper, she stormed back this week with this case. Things seem to be going very badly for her. If she thought that her new high profile would reap benefits, unfortunately, it's not coming that way. She's just stepped down, as you say, as CEO of this charity Sister Space that she's created. She is blaming this on online abuse that she's received, and she's blaming the palace for not helping her with this online abuse, even though she's thanked them previously for helping her with this online abuse. And she's blaming them for not apologising properly, to which you have to say, you know, how many apologies do you need, my dear? Because honestly, this woman has had 3 apologies at least. As soon as the Hussey remarks were made, Prince William and the palace condemned them. They removed poor Lady Hussey from her office, unadvisedly, in my opinion. They introduced training for equality and inclusivity in the palace as well. And then they had a meeting at Buckingham Palace between Fulani and Lady Hussey, which was full of warmth and understanding, we're told, where an apology was offered and fully accepted.
So she's had the apology many times?
Apology, yes. And I mean, far from the palace apologising to her, I think most people would think she needs to apologise to the palace. Remember, this is the woman who said that Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, had been a survivor of domestic abuse at the hands of her in-laws, which is a remarkable statement.
It's quite a libelous statement.
Particularly when you're running a domestic violence charity yourself, you know.
Yes.
And, of course, of all people, Lady Hussey. Poor Lady Hussey deserves an apology for having her reputation traduced. A fine, noble lady of 60 years' service, loyally to Crown and country, who has met thousands of people from all cultures over the years without a blemish on her record, not a racist bone in her body, as you can just ask the church she goes to every week, which is majority black. They all love her there. And then we find herself in this situation. And if you went on to, all she did was ask someone where they're from. If you went on to social media last year, it looked as if she'd written the foreword to Mein Kampf or was the warm-up act for Kanye West. You know, this terrible storm around her, completely undeserving.
It does seem like massively overblown, given that Lady Hussey's job was, of course, to find out information from people as they were arriving at the palace, to convey that information to the royal family. That's part of the job, isn't it?
That's a key part of it. Her job is to go around, find interesting people, find out about their background and who they are, so that should a member of the royal family come, they can be introduced to them. And as I said before, quite frankly, if you arrive at the palace dressed up like an extra from The Lion King, don't be surprised if someone asks you where you're from, because she wasn't wearing any national dress. It was a costume she cobbled together from her wardrobe. No one knew where it was from, and it's, you know, she's made an entire career out of dressing about her identity. And it's very interesting that somebody whose life is devoted to their own identity, who has studied at SOAS African Studies, and who says that Africa is actually her life story, suddenly doesn't want to talk about it when somebody expresses an interest in it.
That's very interesting, because she was obviously very proud of it. She changed her name to have a more African name. I believe she was wearing earrings in the shape of Africa at the event.
Well, she said all sorts. She had a couple of coasters there at one point too. But the thing about her is, she also, I would say, she needs to apologise to the people of Africa. This is a lady born in London. Her parents are from the Caribbean. She doesn't know where in Africa she's from. She's worn Ethiopian garb. She's worn Ugandan garb. She's worn Nigerian garb. She's got a name that's also been culturally appropriated. If you live by the woke sword, I think you should die by the woke sword. And she needs to apologise for all that. If she had arrived wearing a smart two-piece suit from Marks & Spencer with her real name, Marlene Headley, none of this would have come up.
I suppose the counter-argument is that, you know, it can be very, very annoying for people. Is it if someone asks where you're from and you tell them and they keep asking you, there is potentially an implication there that, well, I don't believe what you're telling me. You're really from somewhere else.
Sure, but the fact that this Lady Hussey has existed for 60 years without this being a problem, her misfortune was to bump into Ngozi Fulani, a woman who sees racism wherever she goes, who looks for racism wherever she is. Everything is seen through the prism of racism, so it's understandable that someone like that will misinterpret completely harmless things in a racist way and will also overreact about them.
So why have we reached this point? Because obviously when racism does occur, we need to be robust in challenging it. But when you have a situation like this, where the evidence would all seem to suggest that there was no racist intent here at all, why would the palace then apologise and put in place all these measures to deal with something which doesn't exist? Why not just say, actually, I'm afraid we think you were mistaken here? Why not have the strength to do that?
You might well ask that. I couldn't possibly comment. It's very true. At the time that it happened, you have to remember, of course, Prince William and Catherine were actually in America on a tour, so the timing couldn't have been worse. In fact, some people thought this had been deliberately stage-managed to occur for maximum damage, and the incident overshadowed everything that was happening on their tour. So there was a degree of damage limitation, and I think they do realise now they acted too quickly. You know, and I think they now know from this reaction, actually, also, too, that there's no way that you can appease people like this. The cancel culture champions will never be appeased. You know, Churchill famously spoke about appeasers feeding the crocodile. They'll never be satisfied. Rather than apologising, you should just stand your ground, as Jeremy Clarkson found out, talking to, you know, with his apology to Meghan Markle.
But that's right, isn't it? I mean, the apology seems to make things a lot worse, and it sort of disincentivises people from apologising. Sometimes apologising can be a good thing, right?
Yeah, you lose your self-respect. But we live in this era now where as soon as someone makes an accusation, they become not the accuser, they become the victim. And once you're a victim, any attempt to rebut or to challenge that perception turns you into a victim blamer, which is a complete no-no. And also, if race is involved, then those people become elevated almost to the level of being civil rights activists. And you've seen that with Fulani, the way that Radio 4 on the Today programme treated her as if she was Rosa Parks. You saw Meghan Markle going up to, the Duchess of Sussex going to receive this award for racism, again as if she's a civil rights activist. In both cases, they're not Rosa Parks, they're more like Jussie Smollett, I would say. So
what do we do then at this point when, you know, we have a situation where she can just come back into the news, ask for an apology again? Now's the point at which we should just say enough is enough, right?
Enough is enough, yeah.
Surely. But will that happen?
Well, the more coverage we give to it, I don't know. This is a crazy world we're living in. Let's just hope so.
Maybe the royal family should just have an apology on a loop every day for the rest of their lives. That might be the way to do it. Anyway, Rafe, thanks very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. So, after the break on Free Speech Nation, my panel will be answering questions from viewers at home, including their thoughts on a German woman who's having a sexual relationship with an aeroplane. Don't go anywhere.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it. Like, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, following the fierce debate around Gary Lineker, the message is a clear one. What's the point in having borders if you don't police them? Stop the votes might be unpopular among millionaire ex-footballers, but for ordinary Brits, it's time to sort this issue out once and for all. In my take at 10, as people borrow money for private operations and pay to tutor their kids at home, the public sector isn't working. Plus, politics legend Anne Widdecombe, my all-star panel, and former Labour MP Simon Danchuk. See you at 9.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. My panel, Leo and Bruce, are back with me, and it's time to get some more questions, but this time it's from the audience at home. Thanks for emailing in. This first question was sent in by Lewis, and Lewis says, who asks with... No? Oh, yeah, here we go. With Goosebumps now getting the edit treatment, will the assault on children's literature ever stop? So, of course, this is off the back of the Roald Dahl story, but apparently R.L. Stein, who writes these scary children's Goosebumps stories, has revealed that his books have been edited for so-called sensitivity. Now, we've talked about Roald Dahl on this programme before, Leo. Now they're going after the horror books, but the idea of these books is they're meant to be a bit scary, a bit chilling. Like, you know, the old Grimm's fairy tales. They were quite scary stories. Kids loved them.
Oh, they're terrifying, like children being cooked by witches and all sorts. I mean, it was real sort of visceral stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's a scary book, I mean, to be honest, if I want to scare a kid, I just tell it I might be its dad. But if it's a scary book, surely it's supposed to be a bit challenging for them.
Well, also, the author has said that he has not been consulted about these changes. That's what's interesting, because most with these sensitivity readers, they come in and they say to the author, well, this is what we'd like to do. They didn't consult Roald Dahl either, because he's dead. So, I mean, this isn't good, is it?
Well, he could be voting in the SNP leadership, for all we know, so who knows? That's what you call a callback. Sorry, who is it that goes around inquiring as to this stuff?
A lot of publishers now have what they call sensitivity readers.
Right.
It all started with children's literature, you know, but it's actually creeping into adult literature as well. So I have a friend who writes crime books. He had a sensitivity reader who kept saying to him, look, your villain keeps saying nasty things. You have to cut that out. He said, yeah, but he's also cutting people up. He's a serial killer. They're not known for being pleasant.
No, and the villain, they're not necessarily light and frothy.
No, but apparently if a serial killer says something that's a bit homophobic, that's worse than him dismembering his friends, apparently.
Has that been on Netflix?
No,
I think I might have watched that in blackout at some point.
Yeah,
Is
a lot
that
of
to do
things.
with Jeffrey Dahmer or something like that? He wasn't nasty, he was just hungry?
I don't know about that.
Was he not a killer? Was he a homo?
I just want to know, like, this sensitivity reader, what are they going to put in that's terrifying for the kids of today? Are they going to have somebody being misgendered?
Well, I mean, it could be something like that. I would say just leave the books alone, and then, you know, if your kids...
I would say leave the books alone, or write new books, or encourage new works, or get sensitivity is the wrong word, but a genuine person to read Hello and not make it sycophantic.
Oh, well, you'd never succeed.
Well, exactly, that's the whole thing.
That's what it's about. OK, we've got another question now. This is from Beverly, and Beverly says, would you be scared to work with Annika Rice? No. She's a living legend.
Of course not.
So there's going to be this reboot of Challenge Annika. Can't wait. I mean, I've been looking forward to this for years. Apparently ruffled feathers with the young production staff because sources on the set are saying that Ms. Rice is terse and abrasive in her approach to work. And this has prompted, you know, lots of the young employees working behind the scenes quite upset about that. But what do you expect? She's up there in a helicopter in a tracksuit.
But it's not a tracksuit. It's a very stiff, starched jumpsuit. It's probably a man-made fabric and hellishly uncomfortable.
Right.
She's also a woman a lot older than she was, so, you know, there could be that as well.
Yes.
And
she looks great, though.
She looks fantastic.
Yes.
And a very gifted artist.
Yes.
But I actually remember turning up to do... I was talking to you about that, actually, turning up to do a warm-up job, and I was employed by a friend of mine, and this friend had said, hi, Princess, how are you? As they normally would, and I said, hey, how are you? And all that kind of stuff. And someone ran up to me and went, if you need to speak to HR, I can take you up. And
why?
I went, why? That's my friend, and that's how they address me. So why is it any of your beeswax?
So they were assuming that...
you pipe down?
Someone calling you princess was misgendering you.
Well, not necessarily misgendering me. Maybe they thought it was homophobic. Maybe they thought it was a slight. I just thought it was funny and thought, good, you really have time on your hands.
Why are people digging for offence, and what's the point? Why?
I think because they don't have a personality. I think that's a big thing. But going back to Annika, the hair looks fantastic.
Yeah.
She doesn't look as though time's touched her. And that's it's very tricky. You'll back me up on this. To have a long bob and not have any flyaways, and she has succeeded. So she should be celebrated.
She should be celebrated, and in order to have that kind of immaculate look, you have to be a bit abrasive and terse. I mean, look at Margaret Thatcher. She was always well turned out.
The whole point...
Her hair was fantastic.
Brilliant. The whole point of rising through the ranks in the media and becoming, you know, in a position of power is so that you can throw a Cornish pasty at an underling's head.
Yes.
So
you've done that here.
Yeah. I got above my station. Yeah. I didn't realise I was throwing it at an executive who was much more powerful than me. But
yeah, well,
I think the problem is that Annika comes from an old school television background where there wasn't a lot of time. It was a yes or no.
Yes.
And she maybe just wants to get in and out and get the job done.
But that's her job. I mean, a challenge Annika is it's against the clock.
Stop the clock.
Yeah. So I mean, she's going to be a bit uptight, right? Because there's a deadline. Anyway, we've got a question now. This is a bit of an odd one sent in by Jack. Jack says, could you ever imagine falling in love with a plane? Now, you can see the photograph there. That's the German woman who has... This was in the Daily Mail this week. Her name is Sarah Rodo. She's in a sexual relationship with this plane. It's a Boeing 737. I think it's a model of the plane.
It's not a real plane.
It's not a real plane, but she...
Unless she's really big.
She could be really big. But she travelled abroad 30 times last year to spend time with this other plane. So she's obviously got an issue of... She likes planes, generally. That's the thing. So what do you think about...
Planeramorous.
Planeramorous. I think there's probably a word for it, isn't there? Do you judge such people, or do you say live and let live, Bruce?
I say live and let live, but feel free to never come and visit me. Can
the plane consent?
My God, I never even thought
Well,
of
exactly.
that. You really should go for the Nobel Peace Prize, seriously.
I've thought about it.
Well, I don't know, because do you remember there was someone, I think it was on GMTV or GMB, I'm showing my age, and it was about guide dogs, and they were upset because guide dogs hadn't been consented for training to help blind people.
Oh.
Yeah, so you make a good point. has the plane been consigned? How big is this plane? Where does the
But you
plane
get
live?
angry guide dogs that are resentful that they've been forced into this life of helping.
I think they always seem
I thought the whole
quite
point of
well
dogs is
measured.
like they're. I don't, but I do know that plane, if she's in a sexual relationship with it already, it's an easy jet.
Right, and on that note, we're going to go to a break. I think I need one. But after the break on Free Speech Nation, social sensations, which this week includes a man who goes everywhere with the crane that he rescued. That's a bird, by the way. Plus, the best of your unfiltered dilemmas. See you in a moment.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely
Right.
stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship,
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
and no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. And every week we dedicate this part of the show to the world of social media. But first up, we're going to be having a look at this. An unexpected bond has become unbreakable between a crane and the man who saved its life in rural India. Have a look at this. So last year, Arif Gujar found this injured, bleeding crane on his farmland, and he brought the crane into his home to help it heal. And that bird now never leaves his side. And you can see there from the footage, it just follow. And they're massive birds. I mean, they're 6 foot wingspan.
Yeah.
You'd be terrified if that was following you on your bike, but they're the closest of friends now. It's quite sweet, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really nice. I mean, I don't know, does the crane do anything else for him?
I don't believe so. It doesn't do household chores or anything like that.
Right.
I think it's just a mate.
Just hangs around.
Just
with
hangs
him.
around.
Right.
So it could be quite creepy. I think it's quite nice.
Where does the crane sleep?
So I haven't inquired as to the sleeping arrangements of the crane. Are you implying something?
No, I was just asking.
No.
What's wrong with your diseased mind? Stop this.
I imagine he's had a thing built for the crane to sleep in.
nest?
Like a large bird cage.
Like an ensuite for the crane.
An ensuite for the crane, yeah. I think it's very sweet.
No, I think it's lovely. I think that's really nice. I think it goes to show that we can overcome so much more.
We can, can't we? There's a lot to be learnt there.
But where does the crane sleep?
I don't know, Bruce.
No.
Right, it's one of those feel-good shows. Let's move up now to Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson was caught showing off his particular set of skills as he enjoyed watching his favourite ice hockey team at Madison Square Gardens. Let's take a look. There is a problem, though, isn't there, when celebrities become known for a particular, like, catchphrase or thing that they do, and then they feel obliged to do it wherever they go. I mean, I remember hearing John Burko on the bus being filmed. He was doing that order thing, because that's his catchphrase now.
Right, was he driving the bus?
He was not, as it happens.
Right.
So people had said, do your thing, do your catchphrase.
Right.
Liam Neeson is constantly going to get this with the, I will find you and I will kill you.
Yeah, and considering he's done so much other stuff that was really good. I mean, there was some bad stuff as well. There was Star Wars, but there was some really good stuff.
Hawk the Slayer, that was good.
Hawk the Slayer, I don't know Hawk the Slayer.
One of his early works.
Is that Hawk he befriended and now follows him around on a bicycle?
That's what it should be.
Yeah, there's, I mean, some people like Victor Meldrew, well, it's not even his real name, but everybody just knows him as Victor Meldrew.
Yes.
Everybody just comes up to him in the street and says, do the line, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Or I can't believe it, or however he said it.
There was even a Father Ted sketch about that.
Right, yeah.
Where a Father Ted says, oh, this will be an amazing thing. He's never heard this before.
So it must be an albatross round your neck. I mean,
must be.
Although if the albatross is something that you've healed and then is following you around, that's a good
Where is
thing.
the albatross sleeping? This is the question.
With the sleeping arrangements of these birds.
Well, I just think it's nice.
Now, what do you think of... do you have a catchphrase, Bruce?
No. No, probably that's my catchphrase.
Yeah, no is your catchphrase.
Bruce, do you have any opinions on that? No.
No, that's your catchphrase.
No. Yeah.
But he must get sick of it. I mean, I bet he felt under pressure to do that because he was at Madison Square Gardens. Everyone's watching him. He's got to do his threatening Irish brogue.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you think so?
That's what I think so.
Do you think it's the same with the guy that's the father of Peppa Pig?
I don't know about the father of Peppa Pig.
Well, he apparently is, and he was on the Graham Norton show, and there was a guy, is it The Mandalorian? I can't remember what the name of the guy is, and they want him to do the voice, whatever the voice is, and he says that because it's a show that's for children or children watch, it's quite a breathy voice. He doesn't feel it's the best voice to do, and they want voicemails and answer phone messages and all that kind of stuff.
Tiresome.
And then a girl who was a singer, her father is the voice of Peppa Pig, and apparently he gets harangued all the time anywhere he goes, particularly in the meat aisle of a supermarket. Because do you not remember when, I think it was during lockdown, and these... It's the Peppa Pig puzzle piece, and it was Waitrose Essentials pork medallions or pork cubes. So you put it together and get a pig.
Has Peppa Pig actually done advertising for bacon products and pork products?
No, but apparently she's not very nice, and she's a fattist. She keeps calling her dad fat.
Is that right?
Apparently
Well, then
so.
she deserves to be chopped up into rashers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Show me your crackling.
There we go. So finally, a bizarre boast from the government this week that if you come to the UK illegally, you'll be denied access to the nation's modern slavery system. Surely that's a good thing, isn't it? Let's have a look at this. This was the... there it is, denied access. So if you come to the UK illegally, you'll be denied access to the UK's modern slavery system. What on earth are they thinking? Who on earth has done that?
Well, the trouble is the systems and processes that we put in place to deal with genuine asylum seekers and refugees that can then be gamed and exploited by people who just want to come to the UK.
Yeah, but that's quite a gauche messaging, isn't it? Because, I mean, that's implying that we have an official slavery system here.
Oh, right. Yeah, if you look
really
at the other
badly
way.
phrased.
Yeah, we're going to make you a junior doctor and only pay you £14.09 an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think the government are getting a lot of flack for having to deal with something that's an absolutely intractable issue, and however you deal with it is going to be horrible.
No, that's true, and I think it is something that does need to be dealt with, but I think they need to think through their advertising campaign about this a little bit more, because that was just gauche.
Maybe get Gary Lineker to front it.
Maybe.
Who knows?
I mean, he's not doing much at the moment. What's that with him?
Well, according to his son, he will be back.
He will be back, OK.
Yeah, he's just maybe having a wee race.
Yes. Do you watch Match of the Day?
Yeah.
Are you a big fan?
Oh, clearly. Football is my life. You've no idea. Yes.
They said that when it was on the other night that it was a lot better.
Again, you're speaking to the wrong person because whether there's punditry,
yeah, of course.
Just, please.
Any thoughts on that, Leo?
Well, the whole thing I've noticed about football,
you don't
watching
like football,
yeah, it's like I try to tell my mates, it's like you're literally just watching other people play football. It's dead boring. It's like watching somebody doing plastering or something. You're not even playing it yourself. You're watching other people doing it. It's like watching somebody playing a computer game. I know that's actually a form of entertainment now, but that's stupid as well.
You say that, Leo, but we are not the best panel to discuss this because we don't generally like football on this panel, right? But the thing is, people love it. They get obsessed with it.
But if a fight breaks out in the stand, which hopefully it does, if a fight breaks out, everybody turns and watches the fight because fights are better. If you're at a boxing match and people start doing keepy-uppies, nobody turns and watches the keepy-uppies.
That's not true, though, is it?
It's 100% true.
Right?
Fighting is much more interesting than football.
Why don't they just incorporate it like they do with ice hockey, where the fight is actually part of the show, isn't it?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, bring that back.
I saw an ice hockey game in Canada.
Did you?
Yeah, it was terrible.
Did you enjoy it?
No, it was awful.
No? Why did you go?
Someone said I should go, but it was just burly men fighting. It's not my sort of thing.
No, of course not. You're above that.
Absolutely.
You have wonky floors.
I do have wonky floors.
Yeah, we were
talking
about that.
Now, the part of the show where we talk through your unfiltered dilemmas. We've got a dilemma here which has been sent in. And by the way, I do thank you. Every week you do send in these problems, and I do appreciate it. This is from Rob, and Rob has said, is it wrong that I preferred Match of the Day without people stating the bleeding obvious? Well, it's not really wrong, is it? But I think a lot of people... Because you were saying, Leo, that this version of Match of the Day got more ratings.
Yeah.
So actually people don't necessarily want to be told what Gary Lineker thinks about
exactly,
someone kicking a ball.
And the BBC can save so much money from their wage bill by not having these overpaid celebrities on it. And also doing that will help close the gender pay gap, because a lot of them seem to be men, like Gary Lineker.
Yes, why are they not getting more women onto this?
Yeah, it's disgusting. They need more women and more ethnic minorities presenting Match of the Day.
I second that. What do you think of that, Bruce? Yeah, that's Never thought you'd say something like that, Leo.
Yeah.
Pushing for the diversity. But I think you'd make a very good point. If they can run the show without paying over £1 million for a particular presenter...
Well, what's the point?
What's the point in having him?
Exactly.
I mean, what's he good for?
Gogglebox. Get him on Gogglebox.
He should do Gogglebox instead,
Yeah,
yes. And then he can tweet however he likes, because that's not on the BBC.
Absolutely.
All right, we've got another dilemma now. This is from Rick. Rick in West London. And Rick says, last New Year's Eve, someone hacked my Facebook account and posted a status update claiming I didn't care what anyone said. I will definitely be drink driving tonight. Now I'm struggling to convince friends that I didn't. Can you convince them for me, please? Well, it sounds like the lady doth protest too much. I mean, I think if he's writing into a programme claiming he didn't, he probably did.
Is he? I mean, is he drunk right now?
He might be drunk.
He's writing it.
Yes, I believe that might be the case. I mean, the thing about this, I often hear this when people say something really stupid online, and their default thing is, I've been hacked.
Yeah.
Do you buy that?
No, because most cases they haven't been hacked. It's just an excuse to. It's quite difficult to hack a Member of Parliament's Twitter account. I've tried many times. And, you have two-factor authentication, so, you need to have the phone as well.
Yes, but it's plausible deniability, isn't it?
Again, I mean, they're trying it. But, yeah, people say it all the time, and it doesn't wash.
Well, I mean, but I remember when I was a school teacher, and this one boy sent an email to the headmaster saying, I really want you, big boy, or something like this. And he'd done that, and he claimed he'd been hacked. Unfortunately for him, the library had CCTV cameras that saw him sending it.
And did the headmaster write back saying, what are you wearing? I mean, how did this...
No, he did get suspended for that. But what was particularly good about it was this was one of the best kids in the school, like really diligent, nerdy, like someone you would never expect to have done this. I thought it was a great thing to do. But it just goes to show that you can be hacked. It can happen. Has it happened to you, Bruce? Have you been hacked?
No. No.
Is that because no one's interested enough to assume your identity?
Sorry, you were a teacher.
I was a teacher. Did you not know this?
No. What did you teach?
English and drama. I used to wear a tracksuit. Yeah.
Drama. There's a surprise. Now the wonky floors make more sense.
Can't you see me as a drama teacher? I used to do sort of...
In a tracksuit?
Well, yes, because as a drama teacher, you have to be quite limber.
Oh?
Yeah, and you have to
Is that so you can be a tree?
A tree is one of the things that you might have to be, but you also... All sorts of things you might
How long were you a teacher for?
I mean, this isn't really the show for this, is it? But,
no, it's just the thing is fascinating.
If you're genuinely interested,
yes.
I was a teacher for about 10 years.
Do you know what? I'm going to Google you.
What, as a teacher?
No, just as a person. I never have.
There are all sorts of things about me that you don't know.
Well, there you go. You're the gift that keeps on giving.
I am the gifted. Didn't you used to be a teacher as well? No, you used to work for cybercrime intelligence, is that right?
Yeah.
Which is the same thing.
Criminal intelligence analyst, yeah.
You were actually doing that?
Yeah,
They gave you that job and they allowed you to do it?
And I worked for the Foreign Office. Oh, they were always trying to fire me. But it's really difficult to get fired by if you're working for a corporation or in the public sector. It's really difficult for people to fire you. It's amazing.
Even you?
Yeah.
I can't believe they let you do that job. Anyway, look. We've run out of time. I could talk about this for ages, but we'll do this next week. Anyway, thanks for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when the BBC wrapped the knuckles of Gary Lineker. More children's books were censored to protect the feelings of, well, who knows. And a German woman fell in love with her aeroplane. Well, live and let live, that's what I say. Thank you to my lovely panel, Leo Kearse and Bruce Devlin. And to my guests, Julie Bindel, Nigel Jones, Luke Gittos, Elnaz Sabah-Bocek and Rafe Hadel-Manku. And if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our wonderful studio audience, you can easily do that. Just go to www.sroaudiences.com and you can apply there. Stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. Don't forget Headliners is on every night at 11 o'clock. That's the late night paper preview show where comedians talk you through the next day's top news stories. Thanks ever so much for watching Free Speech Nation. I will see you next week. Farewell. And that's the end of the show.
Hello, I'm Craig Snell, and here's your latest forecast from the Met Office. Well, as we look ahead to the new working week, for all of us, it's going to stay unsettled and the risk of some further snow at times. So here's the situation as we end Sunday. Got this mild air coming in from the Atlantic, but cold air is always close by across the far north of the UK. And as we go through the next few days, that in fact will sink its way back towards the south. But for the rest of Sunday, we've got this band of rain working its way northwards. As it bumps up into that cold air across the far north, we will see some sleet and snow, especially across the high ground. And to the south of it, increasingly windy, especially along southern counties. Could see some coastal gales here come the end of the night. Temperatures for many mild, 10 to 11 in most towns and cities across the south, a touch of frost across the very far north. And this cold air will sink its way southwards as we go through Monday, so the rain turning increasingly to sleet and snow, even at lower levels at times across Scotland. So there are warnings in force, could see some disruption here throughout the day. Further south, mild but blustery, risk of some rain, especially across northern England, Wales and southwest England, highs reaching 14 to 15 degrees. Into the evening, the cold air continues to transfer its way southwards, so risk of some snow across Northern Ireland, Northern England and eventually into Wales and the Midlands. So again, could see a covering of snow in places, chiefly across the high ground as we go through the course of the night. And then cold behind it, could see some fairly widespread icy stretches come Tuesday morning. So Tuesday morning's commute could be a bit tricky across northern and central parts. Again, expect some disruption here. But all in all, Tuesday is going to be a cold day for all of us once any early rain clears the very far southeast. A mixture of sunny spells and wintry showers, even some sleet and snow possible across the far south, but chiefly across the north as we go through the course of the day. And temperatures struggling compared to recent days, but that cold theme doesn't last for too long in the south. It turns milder but wetter on Wednesday.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock,